Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse. This is episode 226. I am Peter, and unfortunately Matt is on break, on mental vacation. I don't know what although I imagine today is probably doing quite well for his mood. But Connor's here.
I am. And speaking of today, congratulations on America on voting out the orange cheese stick.
Yes, it's a relatively good news day. Obviously that being the big thing. The favorite thing I saw today was just someone made a title card for It's Always Sunny called "The Gang Saves America."
I saw that the other day. Yeah.
But it was more prominent today because today it was like, I mean, admittedly,
I think it must have been yesterday or the day before when it was becoming clear that Philly was going to be where it was saved.
Well, that's the thing
going around.
Yeah, but like he's done well enough in all the other states that were kind of still counting anyway. That even if they lost Philly, that all the other ones would have made up for it. I think, would they have not?
As we're recording right now, Nevada has also confirmed that
Georgia
it's gone
flipped.
Biden.
Yeah. So,
has Georgia gone officially yet?
It was blue in the last map I saw.
It was leading, but I don't think it had been officially confirmed yet.
Well, not called, but I mean, things look like it's less close than it initially appeared. I guess is what the point is.
It is, yeah. That feels good. Still way too many votes for him, but
true.
Things are good.
That said, Biden also did break the record for number of votes for any candidate ever, so they were up on both sides. I
mean, just in terms of the election as a whole, it was the highest turnout, not in terms of percentage, because obviously there's more people now, but just in terms of sheer votes cast. It was the largest ever. I think even in terms of turnout percentage, it's the highest since like the 1920s.
And of course, I can hear people in the distance now. Stop talking about politics. What are you doing? Stop talking about politics. Okay, we're done. Look, there was good news today. Had to be mentioned. Okay, Mass Effect trilogy getting remastered as well. Also good news.
Within the same hour. That was a good hour.
November 7th is doing okay. So, which is the day we're recording this, of course, if you're obviously not hearing this or seeing this till tomorrow. So, good news. Now, admittedly, we don't have a lot of books to talk about this week. We have 4. It should have been 5. This is my bad. I completely forgot that Justice League was out this week and didn't read it. I said Carl could talk about it, but he suggested we would just wait till next week and we'll both talk about it then. So, Justice League issue, whatever it was this week, we'll do that next week. I want to say 56,
but that could be a bit of a guess.
It's the ballpark. It's in the 50s. But what is coming up today, we have Batman issue 102, DCeased Dead Planet issue 5, Young Justice 20, which I actually just double-checked before we started there that it was indeed the final issue, because I couldn't remember if this was the last one or if the next one was the...
Could you not tell by the end?
Well, I'll get into it.
We'll get to that.
I'll get into it when we get there. And we also have Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Batman Hush issue 1, so those are back with a vengeance. Well, I see a vengeance. There's 2 of them, but still,
is that it?
I don't remember 2, but maybe there was more later.
I know there's that and there's Flashpoint. I just assume there was more.
And then,
by the way, I would just like to apologize. There is a handful of firework displays going off outside my house sporadically that are getting louder here or there. So if you start hearing those, that's all.
Bonfire Night was 2 nights ago. Why the hell's the fireworks?
I know, but I think because this is the Saturday, that's when the pre-scheduled displays tend to happen. Although maybe people are just happy about the election results. I don't know. Maybe they're celebrating.
Why not? Yeah.
I did put Yub Nub from the end of Star Wars over a video of the fireworks outside mine earlier on Twitter. Well, it was nice.
Anyway, so Carl will wrap up the show with a Patreon book doing Red Hood issue 50. So, isn't that fun? So that is what's on schedule today. But we did have some questions because we knew it'd be a light week, so there is going to be some questions. It's especially good because there ended up being no news either. There's basically nothing. Maybe one minor thing, but I think it comes up in one of the questions anyway. So that's it. That is going to be episode 226. It's a weird week. Obviously next week things should be very next month things will be very different because we're immediately firing into a month-long event, which then fires into a 2-month-long event. Lots of big things happen next few months. November, relatively speaking, quiet, which is fine.
November is kind of the calm before the storm, isn't it?
Yeah, which is actually kind of fine by me because there's a lot of other things going on in November. So comic books can stay calm. Comic books can be the calm thing for the month.
Yeah,
and that's
I'm okay with that.
So yeah, we'll fire out some questions then. Let's not dilly dally with it. We're
I'd just like to say I made this drink when Pete told me he had like he told me he had 3 books left to read. Half an hour later, I made this drink thinking, we'll be starting any minute. It was like full up to here on the glass when that was.
Well, to be fair, one of the books was over 50 pages, so I'm not.
and the other one was a Bendis book. It turns out.
Yes.
So
yes, the other book was a Bendis book, which was had a lot of caption boxes. So it was like the longest 3 issues could take to read this because if it was 3 sort of like Batman 102s, it'd have been done in like half an hour tops.
Which is why I timed it that way. I thought, okay, they'll be it'll take about this long. I'll go make my drink now, and then I'm like, it's not done yet.
No. Well, there's a lot of things going on with the election results and stuff today. And I got a fancy new SSD for PS4 games because the PS5 is coming soon, of course, and you can play the PS4 games off the external drive. So to save space on the internal PS5 drive, I've got a fancy, external SSD, which, as far as the tests have gone online so far, matches the speeds. If not, actually exceeds the speeds of the internal drive with PS4 games for some reason. But that's here and there.
My Xbox arrives on Tuesday, so I'll probably talk about that next week.
Oh, I'm sure we all can't wait. Yeah, so.
Everyone wants to hear about Assassin's Creed Valhalla and all the castles.
Oh, I definitely do not. I definitely do not. But yeah, so a lot going on. So yeah, let's get into questions. I'll go the email questions first. We'll knock those out. So from Emil Kildy, a couple of questions here. First one, very kind of where are we? This may be a hard one, but what are the iconic definitive creator duos for top tier DC characters, like Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo for Batman, Dan Abnett and Cedric for Aquaman? I mean, I wouldn't have necessarily thought them as a top tier team, but I suppose if I think of my favorite Aquaman stuff, yeah, but they kind of actually are at the top in a weird way.
I get where that's coming from.
You just say if you want to do more general picks or your own favorites, but I left top tier so you can say for yourself how many you want to do. Yeah, go on.
It's I can think of a lot of like pairings in comics that I love. Not that many of them are like DC pairings. Like you think like Brubaker Phillips, right? For me, Gillen McKelvey. Not like big DC runs between them. Lemire Sorrentino is maybe one of the only ones that I can think of that's persisted into DC Comics. I think actually that might have been their first collaboration. Was their Green Arrow run? But obviously they've gone on to do. They did I think they did Old Man Logan at Marvel, and now they did Gideon Farm. So they're kind of
technically it's only one miniseries, but part of me really wants to say Johns and Gary Frank because for Superman. Because I
think they worked together on something before. Because I think Gary Frank drew some of his action stuff, right?
They've worked together on other stuff. But I mean, specifically Superman. I don't remember any Gary Frank action comics from that run, but I mean, I could be wrong.
Maybe I'm really misremembering this here, but did Gary Frank not draw the story with the Legion? I could have sworn he did.
Car's just abandoned his mic. All of a sudden.
He did, yeah. Sorry, it was the Legion of Superheroes story that was part of Johns' action run.
I could have answered very quickly by saying I've not read that part of the run.
No, but I have. I love that story, and so I'm just saying, there is backup to that definitive answer. Is that it's more than one story.
Well, I would have counted Doomsday Clock as kind of a kind of second, in the sense that Superman's a prominent feature of it, even though obviously he's not there.
Sure.
For the whole thing, or even more than say, like a third of it. But it's very much about the spirit of Superman. No, I don't know. So I mean, that's one of the first one. I mean, because I'm thinking about DC characters specifically. Because when I think of Batman, obviously Snyder and Capullo get this kind of thing because they had this big long run. But that's not my favorite Batman by any means. So when I think of like what my favorite Batman stories are, a lot of people would say, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale for.
I think that's a fair pairing that goes, obviously have a couple of Batman stories, but, it just as a general rule, they're one of those solid top tier comics pairings.
Yeah. For thinking of some of the other characters, though, Because even Jeff Johns with Green Lantern went through a few different artists. One of them we don't like to talk about anymore, but
And annoyingly, he is probably the artist I think of the most in regards to that run.
yeah,
If I had to link one artist with it, it would have been him. But yeah, not gonna mention that.
he's having a bad day though.
Oh, he's having a terrible day.
He's having a bad day.
I like how at the start of this you're like, okay, enough with the politics, on to comics.
That was
coming back up.
That was a sly reference. Not talking about it. Because none of the big runs that I can think of have a dedicated artist that stuck there the whole time. Like, when I think of, okay, I keep going to John's runs, but John's Flash run, I can't think of a single artist that was kind of. I mean, there's a couple that I associate. You have Scott Collins, you have.
Yeah, they've got a couple, but there's nothing like that's one major. Not in the same vein as you. I think Snyder and Capullo, obviously he didn't do every issue, but the vast majority, right? Probably like 80-90% was Capullo.
Yeah, it's enough that it feels like they're run.
It does. I mean, the closest I can think of for Flash is Manapul and Buccellato in terms of having a pretty consistent run between them.
This is less a team because it was the same person on both, but in terms of an iconic thing to a character, I think Mike Grella on Green Arrow kind of fits this bill very significantly.
I the same with like there are individual creators like Denny O'Neil with Batman, for example.
Yeah.
Like they're like things like that, but in terms of a duo pairing, it's harder to
DC doesn't
pin down.
Yeah, DC doesn't have as many of those for whatever reason. They'll come up occasionally.
Honestly, I think the reason is they tend to prioritize having the books out on time as opposed to consistency with the artists. Even when there are delays, that does happen, of course. But they do their best to try and kind of keep the books going and have them relatively consistent. And they'd rather swap out artists as and when they need. So it kind of takes away that feeling of artist continuity a bit more.
The second question here is just kind of a general, unrelated one. What's your signature dish? I.e., what do you cook when you really want to show off? And that is something that you absolutely certain cannot, screw up. I can't cook, so I don't have a signature dish. My signature dish is a solid something in the oven that I just put in for 20 minutes to take out.
I cook quite a lot, but I don't cook for guests. I cook for me and Paige, and that's about it. So I'm never showing off with my cooking. I'm like, oh, what do I feel like eating? I make a handful of really good different curries.
When I really want to show off, I'll show off how quick my auto login and Just Eat or the ordering services are. That's my showing off. Like, hey, look at how fancy and easy it is to order food.
I mean, I cook like a lot. Like I made pad thai for the first time like 2 weeks ago. I'd never even eaten it before, and I was like, I'm gonna try and make it.
You still
and it was
phone delivery services? No. Let me show you how the future is. All right, there you go. No human contact. Ta-da!
I mean, look, I'm definitely ordering food as soon as we're done here. Don't be wrong. Because it's a Saturday. Screw it.
No, I ordered food last night, so I'm being more economical.
I don't know what I did last night. I mean, I did a nice chili con carne yesterday. That was pretty good.
Well, here's our next question from the email. The email, of course, is mftvquestions@gmail.com. If you would like to send bigger questions for future episodes, they can sit there in the bank and we'll use them and when episodes like this pop up. But this is from Brett Williams, one of our patrons. In fact, this is a patron who makes Connor read certain books, which is delightful.
The bad books.
Hey, Pete, and hello, Connor. I think he's emulating my intro. As someone who is a year and a half into comics, this is my first instance of experiencing a month-long event. Endless Winter in Future State. Have these sort of short breaks been successful in the past? I know nothing of Convergence with the exception of Pete's hatred for it. Which is funny that you mentioned my hatred, because I never actually read it. I just kind of avoided it. Matt is the one who read it and
I read
despises
two issues. I think I read the 0 in the first issue, and then I read a couple of the side minis that were all right around it.
But have DC's Future End, New 52, Zero, and Villains issues, Marvel's Empire been successful? Is there anything that has come from these? What do you expect from Endless Winter and Future State? Do fans sit the next 3 months out? This is a kind of a weird question in the sense that I think every example you gave there is a complete and almost objective failure.
well, hang on.
Okay, what?
Depends how you're measuring success, because I think critically or commercially. Commercially, I think all of those do very well.
Oh, yeah, I'm not talking about. I don't care about commercially. I'm talking.
Yeah, and
like,
and
every single one that he mentions here, I would say you could happily skip. If you're working through a New 52, I would skip almost everything that falls under those banners.
Well, hang on. This is where I have to disagree very slightly.
Of course you do.
No, I mean, I think it's important to disagree here, because there are a handful of DC runs that during the New 52, the villains issues were not only important but good. While I will agree that as a whole the event is a failure, like it wasn't very good as a whole because everything just stopped. It felt pretty forced. There are some issues that are good.
I'd have to go back and check, but I feel like by the time they got to the villains issues, I'd dropped so many books that it didn't really matter at that point. But
that's fair.
But no, I think the more important comparison here, though, is something like Convergence or some of the stuff that Marvel's done. I'm actually looking forward to both Endless Winter and Future State. I think we're kind of at that stage where we've had the status quo for so long that we're actually kind of excited for a refresh, and these being kind of our shake-up months before we get whatever the new status quo is actually kind of exciting, to be honest.
I think alongside those that you mentioned there already, we did have more recent examples such as Justice League versus Suicide Squad near the start of Rebirth. That was about a 6-week event.
Yeah, I think the key difference here, though, just to make this clear, is that didn't like pause or take over every single book in the line for a couple months, whereas these examples, Endless Winter isn't taking over completely everything, but it is doing a lot of books, and then Future State is outright pausing everything. I
agree.
Months.
I'm just comparing it to the previous examples mentioned there. Obviously, the Villains Month and Future's End Month were everything for a month, but I think Empire was mentioned in the question, which is obviously a recent Marvel event.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to
like that wasn't every Marvel book. It had a lot of tie-ins, don't get me wrong, but I think Justice League vs. Suicide Squad had a handful of tie-ins as well. So I'm kind of lumping that kind of in with that side of the category, which is actually where I think Endless Winter kind of falls for me, where it's taking over some books, but not everything, and it has obviously some tie-ins. But there are other books that will just continue as they were, completely uninterrupted. Whereas Future State is a lot closer to Convergence or the Villains Month, for example, where it's everything is this for 2 months.
It's close in format to Future State, but in terms of actual like interesting what it's, I mean, for a start, it's not just some random ass creator who we've never heard of who's just in charge of the whole thing. It's actually got a lot of creators who are like, oh hey, this is interesting. These might represent future teams. In fact, there's a question coming up related to that. So I would not say people. I mean, if people aren't excited about it, if people are looking at the solicits and looking at these two stories and saying I'm not excited by any of this, then yeah, sure. But I for me, as a fan who does this show because I like reading DC comics, I actually think the next 3 months are pretty exciting. More so Future State than Endless Winter. I think Endless Winter is kind of just a fun 1 month, like a little.
I think they're exciting for me as well, but for different reasons. Endless Winter, I think I'm excited about because I enjoy those kind of just like, here's a fun romp story that we're going to do kind of at a pretty quick pace for comics. It's unusual to get stories at that sort of speed, at least at that level of story that we're telling. So that's fun. Whereas Future State, I'm also excited because I'm just intrigued, but I'm probably more trepidatious about that than I am Endless Winter in that. If you wanted to, times are tough right now, and if you wanted to save some cash, I wouldn't blame anyone skipping DC Comics for 2 months there. But I do think there are things there that look enjoyable and interesting. So, but I mean, all of this is obviously quality dependent, which we don't know right now. It's hard to say. Like
the best
Convergence, even as a concept, Convergence. You could tell me that now. Don't tell me the reasons why it exists. Just tell me this is a story we're doing for 2 months, and I could go, okay, there's potential. I think if you told me that now, where we're in a good place with DC Comics, obviously coming where it was in the New 52, goodwill was nowhere to be found. So they kind of went into that with that. But I don't know. It's not that different to me conceptually.
from a release format, it's not different at all. It's a very similar kind of style of release. Conceptually, things are very different because we're doing this in a very different place. We're doing this with some kind of purpose in the creative line, whereas last time with Convergence, there was no creativity involved with it at all. Now, some things were kind of taken from some of the tie-ins, obviously, later, but that was not a planned thing. That was just... we need 2 months of like kill time because we're moving offices, and this is just all it is.
Yeah.
But even that's irrelevant here. That doesn't really matter in the context of what we're talking about here. That never looked appealing. From the second they solicited Convergence, it looked bad.
I do think part of it is where we were with DC at the time. Like at the time, DC was on a pretty bad streak.
Oh no, I'm sure that does contribute, but I still think it looked bad. Like it just looked bad from scratch. I think there's stuff in these solicits for these different things that look entertaining, they look good, they look potentially they could maybe be a big deal. And the difference for me that's very key here is that I went into Convergence, the second I looked at those solicits, I went, well, I guess I'm taking a couple months off. When I looked at the solicits for this stuff, I immediately said, I'm reading more comics in January and February than I have done recently. I'll be reading more per week than I was before. Or at least a higher page count, because some of them are bigger books, so there's less number of books. But
I'm not sure, at least as our regular schedule, I agree with that. December might be more comparable because there are extra things we're reading because of Endless Winter, so I'm not sure how that stacks up in comparison.
Yeah, so... You know, I'm optimistic. It could be bad, and if it's bad, we'll find out it's bad, and we'll complain, and we'll have fun doing that too. But,
but like I say, I do think if you're quite tight on money, you know, and you're like humming and hawing over it, maybe wait and see, and you know, come and check us out and see if what we think, and you know, if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, and then get on board for the rest of those series that you like the sound of, perhaps.
Yes. But Future's End, I skipped completely. Villains Month, I skipped almost all of it. Zero Month, I did not skip and regretted not skipping almost all of it. So, typically, these gimmicky ones they used to do like once every year. Every anniversary of the New 52, they had to do this gimmick month. It was just this thing that got in the way and paused all these stories. Now, while Future State is pausing a lot of things technically, part of the whole point of this is to get all the creative teams in line and let them get ahead. There's more of a well-natured purpose to this pause than there ever was before, where it's just a sales gimmick. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure the sales for these will probably do quite well, just because events and these big sort of things tend to do well. So
I think Endless Winter will definitely do well. Future State could go either way. I know my comic shop is just gone, hey, we're kind of adding everyone who is interested in these DC titles. We're adding what we feel is appropriate as to what we think you might enjoy, but let us know yes or no on specific titles.
Also added this to the question. P.S. Connor, I was very pleased with myself with my 3-month plan of Action Comics, Superman, and Robin King. Though I do feel bad for Superman 25 because that was awful. And though I don't have a great second 3-month plan, just know that Rosmo and Bendis are lurking like Jaws, waiting for you in January 2021. So,
wait, are they? Do they have a book?
I can't remember, but
shit, are they on the Legion book?
I can't remember. I don't know.
No, I can't either.
I don't know. Don't ask me questions I don't know the answers to. So there you go. That's the email questions, but we'll jump over to the Twitters. If I can find my right tab, there we go. And we'll look at some of these questions. There's a couple that were kind of similar, which hopefully I'll bundle them together. Oh my god, stop clicking on the other window. My god.
Professionalism, people.
What? Windows! Behave yourself. It keeps snapping back down. Right, there we go. Oh. Okay. Right. Where are we here? So, from at RLS1980, otherwise known as Ryan, how much do, it is an image here which I'll read from here in a second, but this is the question. How much do you think these creative teams represent future runs? Wade Manipal on Superman, Williamson and or Tynion on Titans, Bat Family title coming, interesting stuff. So I've got to look at your screenshot here. So this is Death Metal, the last stories of the DC universe, which was solicited a while ago, but the final kind of like teams are solidified this past week or so.
I believe this issue is coming early December, for anyone wondering.
Right, so that's this page revealing all the creative teams and what stories they're doing. It's one of these pages at the back of the book, especially in the digital versions. So here's the teams that are here. I'll read these out. So we got the Titans in Together, which is Joshua Williamson, James Tynion IV, and Scott Snyder writing with Travis Moore on art. We have Green Lantern in... we'll just tackle them one at a time. So that one there, given that it's 3 different writers and it's the Titans in Together, that might make me think that if there is going to be some like continuation of like the creators here, that maybe they're taking different characters each. If that maybe not Snyder, but I can see Tynion and Joshua Williamson.
It's possible.
Or Joshua Williamson will take the Titans, but James Tynion's going to do some stuff with Dick, so that's why he's kind of involved here because Dick's in this story, kind of thing.
Maybe I'd just love to add my own speculation on this story and kind of a general one before we go on for these, because I think it's applicable to kind of all of them here. This is a death metal tie-in specifically. Those 3 creators that you just mentioned have been spearheading all the death metal stuff. Obviously Snyder in general, but Tynion and Williamson have been working very closely. They did like the speed metal and the Trinity Crisis. Yeah, well. So I think that is, if anything, more like that is going to be the quote unquote main continuation of the story for this one shot.
Well, this is, I think something that's worth mentioning here is this is a good question, but I actually think this question is far more applicable to the Generations one-shot, which I feel was more kind of teasing potential future runs. But anyway,
the Generations or the future state, because that was kind of my second point here, is I don't think any of these are necessarily teasing anything. I think as exciting as some of them are, the
death metal ones, yes. Let's go up to the list regardless. Green Lantern, and Last Nights by Jeff Lemire and Raphael Albuquerque. I mean, if they give me a Jeff Lemire and Albuquerque Green Lantern, I'm not going to complain with the...
If they give you a Jeff Lemire and Albuquerque anything, you're not going to complain.
No, I would. I'd complain if it was Constantine or Red Hood.
I don't think I would. Like even Red Hood, I don't think I'd complain if that was the team.
I would. Wonder Woman in the question, but this is Tamaki doing this one with Sam Pierce, so like that's the current run. That's fine. You get Green Arrow and Black Canary in A Dust of a Distant Storm. That's Gail Simone with McGann Hetrick on the art. I wouldn't say no to a Simone Green Arrow Canary book by any means.
No, that'd be fun.
Aquaman in Whalefall. This is Christopher Sebula writing with Christopher Mooneyham on the art. I mean, Aquaman does need a new team.
It does, and I'm familiar with both of these names and have enjoyed things from both of them. Mooneyham, I think, did that really 90s-esque Nightwing stuff that we had a while back. There was a couple of arcs that you liked the art more than me, if you recall that, while we were still reading Nightwing. That was him, I'm pretty sure.
I really don't, but I'll take your word for it. The Bat Family and We Fight for Love. Cecil Castellucci writing with Mirka Andolfo in the art. I mean, that could lead to anything. But there's so many characters involved in just the Bat Family. Superman and the Man of Tomorrow with Mark Waid and Francis Manapul, as the question itself pointed out. This is the one, right? That's Mark
the
Waid.
Killer team, yeah.
Mark Waid on a Superman book. I don't even care about Manapul. Manapul, sure, great.
I mean, if Matt was here, he'd back me up. Manapul, like, yes.
I just Mark Waid on Superman is a big deal, and
it is.
If Mark Waid does end up in any sort of long-term Superman project or some sort of miniseries or something, then I will be absolutely delighted. I don't know, like we said, I don't know if these death metals stories here in this one shot are actually the ones teasing anything going forward.
I think, yeah, like we've had a couple of these death metal one-shots, the anthology style at this point, that have had all sorts of different teams on, and I don't think we've ever speculated that, this is the team going forward on any of them.
No,
but it was no reason to suspect otherwise on this.
No, but it was something I immediately said when we got the solicit for the Generations one shot, is that it felt a bit more of a tease potentially for where some of these people may end up going.
And maybe even Future State could be like a testing ground for some of them.
But that was that question. So then from Not a Robot, the handle's cut off on Not a Robot Show. Thank you. There we go. That's the handle. If you had to pick one, do you think that after January, DC will have multiple instances of heroes existing in different timelines, published at the same time, or will it be that every arc exists in its own world, or will it be all cohesive storylines? I don't think they're going to separate everyone into different continuities.
Not at all. When they talked about at the end of that, kind of at the same time, I assume they mean the future state thing in general. Because if you recall, when we went through those solicits, some of those seem to be happening at different points in time. In terms of in the future state world, some of them were happening at different times.
Yeah. Well, actually, let me add in these next two questions because they all kind of sort of touch upon kind of the same thing. So from Stanley Coda, do you think the whole Omniverse model will basically make everything Black Label titles? I can see everything having a is it in continuity feel like Strange Adventures, Three Jokers, or Mr. Miracle? And then the other question here, again, can I attend to some of this? This is from Team Rocket Leader's the name, but the handle is at WeaponX1800. Do you think this will make do you think this people buy less titles and the feeling that the stories won't matter since they're all separate from it being the Omniverse? I think that's maybe specifically for Future State, but
yeah, I mean,
so yeah, all this Omniverse talk and all this, like, I don't think that the way that the shared continuity works after February is going to really be any different.
Me either. I think this is all just
what's in the continuity might be different, but the actual way it works, like it does now, where there's some Black Label books or some kind of in continuity books, the main line stuff I think will work as it has done for ever, basically.
Yeah, I don't see it being any different to that. I think what the second question there was kind of all essentially treated like the Black Label stuff, where it's is it or isn't it, and there is no main line, not a chance, because they'd be missing out on too many crossover opportunities.
Not yet. I mean, maybe there's a day in the future someday where this could go this way, but I don't think we're even close to that.
I think right now the mainline stuff, there are too many things that sell extra copies because they tie it in or cross it over with something with another book in that mainline continuity that it's just an easy sales boost, and they're not going to want to give that up.
Yeah, and you know, if because I think honestly that last question might have even incorrectly quoted the wrong thing, because it might have been in response to the other question, but the idea being like, you know, would it hurt sales if everything was sort of Black Label-esque? I don't really think it would. Although that said, I do think you would see a big focus on the same few characters, and a lot of the other characters would just be forgotten and never get books again.
Yeah, like I say, I think it hurts sales in the sense of, okay, we can't cross over and tie these in as easily and do like those cross promotions that do, you know, definitively boost sales on those books.
Actually, having said just what I just said about some of the smaller characters have been left behind, they actually do really well when they give something like a Mr. Miracle, like the prestige kind of like position of saying, hey, big creative team on this book, 12-issue series. So maybe I'm actually incorrect, and maybe they would actually get more of a chance to shine when they're given a shot like that.
It's a weird thing because I think those characters do so well, not because of the characters, but because they are marketed as the team doing this book, right? Especially after Mr. Miracle.
No, but that's what I'm saying, though. I'm saying that could potentially be happening frequently.
No, I get where you're coming from, but if every book is like this, I think people lose the appeal of, oh, this one feels like a special like run or a little special story for that. And I think that there's a danger of almost oversaturation. And I don't know. I would like to think they're smarter than that.
Yeah, I don't think it's happening anytime soon, though. Where that's where they're switching to the model.
Absolutely not. I think after February we go back to the regular mainline continuity. We have some Black Label books. Maybe we revisit the future state timeline in a miniseries or a graphic novel, so you know, whatever format down the line.
There could even be an ongoing future state series or something like that, maybe launched in March. But I think the regular continuity will be working as it always has done, with, you know, maybe around the same number of books. Nothing super different. I expect, you know, continuity changes. I expect creative team changes. I'm not expecting any great shake up to how comic books function typically.
No, me either.
So, yeah. So those were all kind of bundled together. They were all kind of about the same subject. But yeah, I mean, I expect that in March it'll look like a DC universe that is somewhat recognizable, even if it's a little bit different than what it was before. So,
pretty much.
Yeah. Well, that was basically the questions. I mean, so many of them kind of like tied in together into the one kind of, you know, subject. But, I mean, I'm cautiously I'm very cautious. I'm optimistic about the next few months. I'm excited to see what they do, and if it doesn't end up being a complete home run, then that's okay. Like, it's fine, because we'll get to March. It's not going to take that long to get out of it if it isn't that great. And then we'll see where we go from there.
I think that's the advantage of this being that 2-month event rather than 5G, as it was originally maybe scheduled to be, because these changes would have lasted at a minimum a year. I mean, obviously they'll have claimed, oh, this is the thing going forward, but realistically, we were looking at a year, I think, of those stories. And if they're really good stories, and we get to the end of February and we're like, damn, I wish we'd had a year of that. That'll be a little bit disappointing. Don't get me wrong. But if it was just okay, or or even not that good, like, well, back to normal. No harm in trying for a couple of months.
I mean, if we get to the end of February and we're like, hey, we wish we had some more of that. A, it's better to leave us wanting like that than the opposite, and I guess also B, it means that there is more potential for them revisiting those timelines and those various stories. If people like some of them, especially if they like specific portions, like if they like the Bat part of it, or they like the Wonder Woman part of the world.
How many times does DC? I mean, we've revisited Kingdom Come how many times, right? That's just one example. There are various things.
Flashpoint Batman just won't seem to stay away.
Right. If people react well to things and it sells well, it will be back somehow.
Yeah, pretty much. So there you go. That is a question. So yeah, I think we'll get into the books for the week. So we'll start ourselves off with Batman issue 102. James Tynion the Fourth and Carlo Pagulayan on the art, and
Carlo does a few pages as well.
Oh, does there? Is that a specific part of the book that he does?
I think it's the flashback pages.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. I did not notice the name in the credits. I apologize. So yeah, this is, we're kind of, obviously the last issue was kind of like a reframing, quiet issue of Batman and Catwoman on the rooftops. This is kind of the issue that really brings the Ghostmaker into it, which is merging fairly seamlessly with the Clown Hunter stuff. Because I was wondering, I thought we were doing Clown Hunter first, but it actually turns out that they're kind of intermingled in some way. I did kind of, so the book starts with Ghostmaker interrogating a cop, and I actually kind of loved the weird reference to Batman Begins that happened here, where the cop's like, "I'm not a dirty cop. What? You're a bat. What? You're one of these bat characters. Why are you doing this to me?" I love the idea that this is a cop who is honest, who is a good cop. He's not Flash, and the Ghostmaker says, "Do I look like a bat?" I laughed a little bit at that because I thought, okay, that's a bit.
I think it's important that it started by trying to make you go, oh, okay, they're aware of what they're doing with this Ghostmaker before they do your favorite cardinal sin.
Oh yeah, no, there's things in this issue that I definitely do not like. I don't really like how the Ghostmaker looks in the first place. He seems a bit generic looking to me. He feels. I said this last time, I think, but it reminds me of, like, was it not Mr. Nobody? Was it Mr. Nobody?
It was Mr. Nobody. Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. They looked a little bit generic. I kind of like the look as well, though, if that makes sense. Do you know what I do like about him, which is going to sound very, very particular? I like the baggy trousers. It's very kind of samurai.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I can see the why that is the way it is, like the design choice there. But it feels like this over designed character. Yeah. So it's one of those things that ever since the 90s, like any new character they try to make, I don't even 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, they look over designed and they didn't.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's fine. I don't think it's offensively bad by any means, and I think it's less over designed than some. There's a lot of blank space, which you can't say for a lot of these. They can be a lot worse than that.
Yes.
The helmet is a bit weird though.
So, we introduced this idea called the Grinners, which is this. It's basically like a lot of what the Joker henchmen are. Is that they're kind of, they are people who need mental help, and they've been in and out of Arkham. And it sets up this idea that Batman has typically left this little hideout where they sort of lay low between big Joker periods. And basically he does this because it's because he keeps tabs on it. He can kind of tell when something's like ramping up because they're all starting to do things. They're starting to make noise, and he's seen that there's activity. And so it's actually like
early warning.
Yeah, it's like a barometer for when Joker's about to do something. So that's why he's kind of left it around. But the whole time he's talking to someone, and it's it's the green kind of like comms text, and early on, you're kind of like smelling, going, "Is this Oracle?"
No, I get that. I think it's a weird misleading because this is the first time we've had this Oracle text in a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's weird doing it while we're talking about Joker stuff. Like the first time we see it is over the grinners, and all the green text. It feels like there's this a weird link to Joker stuff before it kind of says it's Oracle.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the build up because there was kind of like a weird moment at the start where I'm like, wait, is this some sort of Alfred AI that he's built into his suit now? Is that is he doing like an Iron Man thing where he's talking to an AI? Because that wouldn't be that on Batman for him to build, for him to have.
It would not, no.
But we see Oracle and she's in the clock tower, and and
it's telling that they know what they're doing because when it finally says Oracle, because Batman says it out loud, it is bolded in the lettering. Like they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and we see her in the clock tower, and she's in the chair at the computers, and it was this sort of moment I was sort of thinking, like, how long did it take them to realize that she can be Oracle without like being in a wheelchair? Like that she can just sit down at a computer, it's fine. Like if they give her a character reason to make the choice to start doing this instead, it's okay.
They're laying that groundwork because she talks here about, I mean, where am I doing more good? Out there as Batgirl or here as Oracle? And then you've got, I think she mentions Cass and Steph wearing the bat symbol now.
She mentions that, yeah, which it does feel like they're kind of teasing something that I want.
It does, yeah.
Oracle running the two Batgirls running around.
Maybe in March that instead of Oracle and the Birds of Prey, it'll be Oracle and the Batgirls.
I'm okay with that. I didn't have to call it that. I could just call it Batgirls.
I know. I was establishing Oracle's role within that there.
But they've been tricked though, because all the sensors that tell her there's so much going on inside this little dive bar that they hang out in, it's all a lie. They're all killed. And she comments that, wait, Clown Hunter's like, there's no way this is him, right? And Batman's like, nah, this is someone else. This is someone because he sees the symbol on the wall and he knows who this is because he says, okay, stop calling me Oracle, this is personal, leave me alone. And then it cuts to the flashback, Dublin, Ireland, many years ago, and this is where I groaned immediately as soon as I turned the page, because I'm like, oh no, it's someone from his past that we've never heard about before. Oh no. I hate when they retcon this shit in. And it's not even been that long since we've done this. Hell, even that character, Mr. Nobody, even he was like a character from Bruce's past. We've done this.
It was, and that was right at the start of the New 52, I think. And I think the other reason why that's on your mind is because the Ghostmaker visual.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a very recent example. We do this every so often with Batman, and I feel like this is so similar. The
big one is another one we're going to talk about later with Hush, right?
Yeah, but Hush is kind of Hush is the one that kind of stuck, and everyone kind of liked his gimmick and whatever. Every time I've tried to do it since, I just grown a little bit about tying in more people, or even it's not quite the exact same, but even in the Hush book later, Lincoln March is brought up, and even that was kind of like, hey, there's this character that's kind of been around, and even if Bruce wasn't as aware, so it sets up this kind of, he's going for
it's Bruce in his training days, and he's got some guy there who he thinks will teach him knife skills.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that this guy who seemingly is going to be a Ghostmaker is got like a sort of low rent Daredevil kind of thing, where he's got like a bandana covering his eyes. When he takes on Bruce. So we get them fighting in the flashback, but then we come back to present day. I did enjoy this little sequence of Harley getting an apartment.
This felt straight out of the Harley book from before. Like it felt like an actual sequel to the Palmiotti and Connor stuff, where she was living in New Jersey, I want to say, with her in an apartment. The dialogue, it just felt like it was part of that run. I mean, in a good way. I will disagree to the extent that when I tried reading a book from that run, I thought the dialogue was painful to read. I thought this was easy. And flowed. There's only a handful of panels of it here, really. But in terms of the concept, how she felt here, it felt like that Harley still, like an evolution of that to me.
I mean, fair. I think one of the key things that always comes up whenever we talk about that Harley run and my dislike of it is I think you sometimes maybe lay a little bit too much on the characterization of Harley being the thing I don't like, as opposed to just the raw writing quality being something that I just don't like in that book.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying this, it feels like the same Harley is kind of my point here. And her living in an apartment, kind of doing her own thing. It's very reminiscent.
But she's getting an apartment, and there's some jokes about her wanting like hyenas. at the end, like, what's your stance on hyenas? Like, oh yeah, because he's thought about this. The landlord's thought about his stance on hyenas.
Yeah, that's the last panel as she pops her head back at her. What's your policy on hyenas?
And she's like, hey, I'll pay you double because I'm a bit of a weirdo, and that's okay. So he gives in because he realizes she's just going to break in until he gives in anyway. But the clown hunter's kind of tracking her, because I was sort of reading this. I was like, okay, it's nice that Harley's kind of like a recurring, like, friendly character in this book. I think I like her being kind of this support character more than I like her being the lead character in something.
It's weird because we've spoken before how we don't want every character to just, or every villain to have the, we're a hero now. But we've done it with Ivy over the past.
But that's not new for Harley now. I mean, this is
it's not. We're kind of just at that stage now where it's okay, and we can just kind of get on with this, right?
Yeah, but that's not what I was trying to talk about. I was talking about, like, her as a lead character. I can't really take in most scenarios. It depends who's writing her, of course. Obviously, if we're talking about Harleen, the Cedric book or something like that,
so good.
But like, I think as a supporting character, she's much like what's a good example here? I'm trying to have a good example. There's some characters that work really well in ensemble, but once you put them in the limelight, once you give them the lead role, it falls apart a bit. But I was wondering though, as I was reading this scene, okay, what's the point of following Harley here? Because this doesn't seem as related to Batman or what's going on, until of course we find that Clown Hunter is spying on her and hunting her and is planning on killing her. But that's when the Ghostmaker shows up. He's going to kill the kid. Batman swoops in, and very quickly, they debate about, like, how you should already put this kid away, but he's giving them the chance to kill again. I mean, hell,
in terms of the kind of inserting into the history, I hate this part here where it's like, we had an agreement. This is my city.
Yeah,
what we've never heard about him before.
I don't like that either. The one thing I did like about Batman and Clown Hunter is that earlier on it was mentioned in the Oracle scene that Batman is the only reason why he's going after this clown place, this was it the Grinners now, is because he's essentially trying to take away all the targets so that Clown Hunter won't kill again. He wants to avoid Clown Hunter having to be taken in, so he's trying to actually just give him take away the choice, take away the potential of him having to kill more people. And it was kind of like this. Okay, it was kind of like I don't want to say sweet, but like he's trying to not prosecute the kid as a complete killer, in a sort of loophole kind of way, where he's, instead of like taking him in and sort of full on Jason Todding him and like like try to make him a Robin, he's doing something different. And I think that was an interesting little beat, and I like that part of it. Everything with how the Ghostmaker ties into Bruce's past and them having this, and even the final page saying, "Oh, we're going to battle for Gotham," because essentially the Ghostmaker's in Gotham now. Because okay, you know what? The idea being, okay, they had this agreement where Ghostmaker wouldn't come to Gotham, but there's been so much shit in Gotham between Bane, Joker War, and everything that's happened out of the entire of Batman's history. The Ghostmaker's finally said, "Screw this! You're doing a terrible job. I'm coming to take over." And how many times have we had some character come into Gotham and say, "I'm going to be better than Batman"? But hell, again, we've done it multiple times probably since the start of the New 52. The last decade has been full of these stories. So I have to admit, Ghostmaker I wasn't super looking forward to begin with. After this issue, I like everything else. I like the stuff with Babs. I like the stuff with Harley. I like all those like sort of regular parts that are going to continue beyond Ghostmaker. Ghostmaker himself, I dislike everything with him.
I think I agree with that. I wasn't as against Ghostmaker as you are. I mean, you weren't even really against, but indifferent. I don't want to say optimistic, but open to what Ghostmaker was. I think a little bit more than you.
I would just say I thought it didn't look that good, and I felt, I guess, like some minor red flags, which, I didn't necessarily know if those were worth anything at the time.
Right.
This issue, though, is just like red flags in my face, just be like, hey, red flag, suffocate with a red flag.
Yeah. I didn't have those before I read it, but reading, I'm like, oh, man. And I thought it was fine in the first scene, where he was interrogating the cop. I thought it was fine there.
Well, I mean, I like the joke there. The reference to Batman Begins there that I quite liked.
Even aside from that, I thought it was fine. Not like amazing or anything like that, but it was fine. It was once it got to, oh, it's all personal. It's all part of his past. Oh, they had this training rivalry that I started groaning, and then in the present day where it's, oh, they have this agreement that he's going to stay out of Gotham, and I just, oh no.
Yeah.
But I like the Clown Hunter stuff and the Harley stuff, like I say. So.
Yeah, I like all the stuff that didn't involve Ghostmaker, which is a good sign for the run because it means when we get past this arc, if it's well, I suppose it won't even be 6 issues, but because it'll have to pause for Future State at least. So we got what, a 4-issue arc?
Yes, assuming that it wraps up before Future State finishes and it's not just left on a weird cliffhanger. I think that's a reasonable assumption, I think.
At the very least, I would assume that he would do like a mid-arc cliffhanger that feels kind of like a mid-season break. Like there'll be, even if it's not the end of the Ghostmaker story, I feel like there'll be a proper cliffhanger that's meant to feel like, oh, this can be a couple of months now.
I'd have thought so. If there were, a handful of people in DC I'd have expected to planned properly for the break, Tynion is one of them that I would think knew what was going on.
Well, he's one of the few runs as well that are going to continue afterwards, right? Because so many of them are needing a new team. Flash needs a new team. Aquaman needs a new team.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Tynion is writing something in Future State.
Yes.
So
well, not even just
he
that.
Obviously knew about it.
He was teasing plans for like the Bat Family from March onwards. So he's I don't know if that's necessarily another book or just whatever he's doing in Batman, but he's teasing something. So
absolutely. So I agree. It's probably going to be the end of the arc, or at least a mid-season. So yeah, we probably just have to get through this arc with Ghostmaker, but I am significantly less excited for Batman over the next couple of months than I was before.
The art's pretty good, I would say. I think Pagulayan, solid job, per usual.
Kind of as usual, yeah. Like I say, thought the other artist that I'm assuming is the flashbacks because it was only a few pages listed in the credits. So I can't imagine where else it would be.
I mean, it actually tells you 13 to 16, so if you counted...
yeah, but I didn't count them. But, I mean, I'm assuming that's still there, right?
It sounds about right. Well, setting count, it's fine.
I am. It's actually those... it's a couple of pages in the Batman fight with Ghostmaker. Oh, and now that I'm looking at it, I can see Ghostmaker does look a bit different. It's when he first shows up on the rooftop with Clown Hunter.
Ah, okay.
The helmet does look a little bit more squashed, I think is maybe the word I'd use. Doesn't look as rounded as it does in the other pages. So I guess I can see it, but not enough that I really felt it to its detriment when I was reading it. So, I mean, no real complaints there.
Yeah, what are you giving it?
Probably just a 6, unfortunately, because as much as the other stuff's solid, the Ghostmaker stuff does drag it down quite a bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll probably go with a 6 as well. I want to make it clear, though, I am super excited for everything this run's going to bring after this. I like everything that's setting up for all the mainstays, all the stuff that's going to be sticking around, all the characters that are still going to be here post this arc. And whatever, even if it's not Batman itself, but whatever other book or Bat Family related thing that's going to happen after this, all that stuff is like, I love the ongoing world of Gotham, and when it feels like there's a solid vision for Gotham, I really like that. But the actual Ghostmaker stuff is just like, it's just full of all the tropes and the comic book cliches that I don't like. So 6 out of 10. All right, that's easy enough. DCeased Dead Planet issue 5, Tom Taylor writing, Trevor Hairsine on the art. So this, of course, is a funny issue for me because I was reading it and there's a great line of dialogue early on, which I tweeted. I'll get to that in a minute, but I was reading this and about halfway through I was like, this is a solid issue as it always is because it's Tom Taylor, he does good work, but it definitely doesn't feel like an issue that's for me because it's so much more based in the magic side of DC's world. There's a lot of references to the spear they're going for, the Spear of Destiny or whatever.
I mean, that's not exclusive to DC. That's just a thing.
No, but I'm not into like that sort of mythology. So yeah, it's another thing when it comes up. I don't go, oh, it's the Spear of Destiny. I go, oh yeah, I vaguely have heard of this. Yes, go on.
The Spear of Destiny, when that shows, it's one of those things where I go, oh, okay, we're doing that. Like, it's not an exciting thing to me, but it's such a common mythology thing.
Obviously, this is what inspired the name of it, but I can tell you more about the Pick of Destiny than I can the Spear of Destiny. So that's a Tenacious D reference for anyone.
I believe I'm correct in saying the Spear of Destiny is the thing that it was the spear that they pierced Jesus' side in with when he was on the cross.
All right. Okay.
And so it's the idea that it can hurt a god. That's where that comes from. I believe that's the origin of the Spear of Destiny, although someone can correct me if I'm wrong.
All right. So if Jesus ever becomes a vampire, you have to make that out of wood. You have to have the Spear of Wooden Destiny to kill him. Is that the rule? Anyway.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to be fair, the spear didn't kill him. It just checked his side to see if he was dead or not, see if he was still bleeding. That's all.
All right, so it's basically like a glorified thermometer. Then is what you're saying.
Kinda, yeah.
So Constantine's got this plan. There's a whole joke at the start how he's like Fate can't get into this room. Etrigan's in there, and he's got this plan that he's not telling anyone about. Although I guess I actually realized this. I never actually knew for sure what this was until later on when it mentioned this was Ragman's cloak. Which honestly is a nice little thing because it's like when it does get brought into the plan, like what it's there for, it makes a lot of sense. Why it needs this.
And I think I like this intro and just that this is inside the Tower of Fate that that Constantine's pulling this shit to Dr. Fate. It kind of gives it an extra layer of bullshittery, right? With him pulling his shit everywhere.
Oh, for sure.
It's kind of fun. And Swamp Thing going along with it is kind of funny.
But, Constantine wants Batman, Damien that is, of course, to form a team to sort of protect his ass as he goes to try and, deal with this, whatever this plan is. And Damien basically refuses to accept unless he tells him what it is. So he does. We don't get to hear it. It's sort of like, we hear him agree to tell him and that's about it. Although there was like a little beat here that's relevant for later where Damien makes sure you're not planning on killing anyone, and he said no one will die that isn't already dead. That is relevant for later.
And I really like this line because as you read it, you assume he's talking about one of the zombies.
Yes. My favourite line of the book, and my favourite line possibly of the week, is so Damien comes over to what this team is that's assembled, and you got Cassandra there, of course, you got Jason Todd, who doesn't wear the mask anymore, and you got Rose, Ravager. And Damien refers it to Bat Family with Ravager and Swamp Thing, but that's, irrelevant to what I'm saying here. And Jason's like, well, technically, we got married, so she's family too. And Damien's response to this question is, wait, she can sometimes see into the future and she still married you? That line.
That's very good.
I love it so much. But then he's like, oh, happy for you too, blah, blah. You got daddy issues, you'll fit right into the family.
Yeah,
that's such
so welcome to the family. You'll fit right in, especially if you brought complex unresolved father issues. She goes, I brought so many.
What I loved I loved this page, and then the story got going, and it was still more tied into like stuff because they get to Nana Parbat, you get Spear of Destiny, you got Deadman, all that, and I love some of these characters. I love Swamp Thing, Deadman's cool, but I was sort of feeling like, okay, this is more about the magic side of DC, so I'm not loving this issue necessarily as much. Some of those character beats and lines are still fantastic, but I'm not as into this as much until it got to a certain beat, and then all of a sudden this issue sort of elevated to like exceptional levels. So when they're going through the Rock of Eternity after getting the spear, which by the way Constantine stabbed what's her face for it,
Rama something,
Krishna.
There you go. Thank you.
So and she's like, she'll get over it, she'll be fine. Take a couple of centuries maybe, but it's okay. But they're going through the Rock of Eternity, and Freddy, as in Captain Marvel Jr., shows up. I hate calling him Captain Marvel Jr., though, because we have so many other members of the Shazam family that don't have, like, Captain Marvel names, if that makes sense. They only have their real names. You don't have a name for Pedro, you don't have a name for those other characters. But basically, throughout all this, things are getting wacky, they don't know how to quite fight. And there's a moment where the spear's been dropped, and there's something about only the pure of heart can touch it, and Cass is reaching for it, and I'm like, yeah, Cass is pretty pure. Like Cass can touch this thing. And we get a page where lightning goes through it, and she says Shazam, and we get Captain Bat Marvel Cassandra Cain, and it's wonderful.
I really like the collar that shows up on her. Because obviously her cape flaps around a lot anyway, but it becomes a full like Captain Marvel style collar. Once the lightning hits her, and I love it. Yeah,
she still has the bat symbol lit up on her belt, but the symbol on her chest becomes the lightning bolt style Captain Marvel.
As it should, really. Let's be honest.
Yeah. If anything, though, I'd have been hoping for like the Captain Marvel symbol going through a bat symbol or something. I was like, mix and match. Come on, do some sort of.
I mean, that's
combo.
kind of why they gave you the best of both with the bat on the belt.
Yeah, I guess. Unfortunately, though, well. I retract
unfortunately
that.
For Rose, not really for us.
I retract the unfortunate, because I had great fun watching Jason Todd die. Rose has to see it twice because she's in the future, and then actually sees it happen, which is wonderfully tragic. I do love that mechanic of putting her through that. Not that I want her to be in pain, but it's good storytelling.
It is, yeah. That's why they do it, right?
So yeah, they come back. Rose is not happy with Constantine, but the line earlier on that was really important because Damien says, "You told me no one would die," and Constantine says, "I told you I wouldn't kill anyone who wasn't already dead." And technically,
he's not wrong.
Jason Todd did die, and he even references it just in case you thought for a second that maybe in this continuity, the whole, even though the fact that he's Red Hood kind of proves that the whole death and return happened, but he does reference it when he's died. He's like, "Hey, I died already. I'm not scared this time."
Yeah, I didn't actually think that was a reference to that exactly, because Constantine didn't kill Jason. I thought it was more a reference to Deadman, actually, where he kind of absorbed him into the Ragman thing. So it was more, well, he was already dead.
Oh well, yeah, but I don't think he is. Like, I don't think Deadman's any more dead than he was before. I thought this was a Jason. This was a Jason reference to me.
No, see, I don't think it was, because he didn't kill Jason at any point.
Well, no, it's not. Because Damien says, "I Boston.
I saw you took Boston Brand." Yeah, it's Deadman.
It was funnier when I thought it was Jason. It was funnier when I thought it was Jason, because he was the casualty. Because he was the casualty on their team, which is why I read it that way.
No, I get why that was in your mind. But yeah, you were wrong.
So I thought this was really funny.
It's still funny.
It's less
still
funny.
Constantine being his usual bullshitting scumbag, and to the point where when Damien earlier was like, "All right, you're going to tell me what the plan is, and you're not going to lie," and Constantine's like, "Oh, you wouldn't know if I lied," and he looks and there's like a panel beat, and he goes, "Shit, you would, wouldn't you?"
Yeah, you are like your dad was the point, because he asked if you were like are you as good as your father? He's like, yeah, not yet. But then he tries to bluff his way out of that, and then he's like, "No, you are like your old man." Oh well, shit.
Yeah, but I don't know. This was still funny to me.
I mean, it's still funny, but it was funnier when I thought it was Jason, because Jason died and came back.
I get that.
I love the technicality that, well, Jason doesn't count because he already died. That's funny to me.
I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, the Spectre shows up and he's like, "Hey, I'm not too happy with you having that spear there. That can kill me." He's like, yeah, you've got a lot of power. Just, look into, use it into insight, channel it into the insight, and tell me what I'm motivated by, or not even tell me, just see what I'm motivated by.
You're the spirit of vengeance. Yeah. Check out what I'm doing it for.
Yeah, and the Spectre just smirks and flies away, and that's the end of the issue. So I think this is a bit more of an uneven issue for me, because I think there's a couple of like the banter early on when it's like Damien and Jason and Cass and all that. I think that stuff's really good. I love Cass. Again, this is them like, okay, Cass just got Captain Marvel powers. This is amazing. And I don't know if it's permanent. It may just be like in the scene because she's holding the thing. But
I think it might be semi-permanent, because that's the whole reason why they go there, right? Is to get the staff that can give the powers. So
yeah. I think I called it the Staff of Destiny. It's not a Staff of Destiny. It's the one that's more related to the Shazams.
It's the Spear of Destiny is the other one.
The Spear of Destiny, yes. What's the Shazam one called? Is that just Shazam's the Wizard's Staff? Is that just what that is?
I think it might be. I don't know if it has a particular name.
That's what they're looking for, though. That's what she touches. Too many staffs. There's too many staffs and spears.
I mean, you literally have Constantine holding both of them at the end, facing off the Spectre, just waving these two sticks around.
But yeah, so some great high points in here, for sure. And yeah,
I think it's a very consistently solid issue. I think it is definitely a middle issue of a story, and I mean, this is 5 of 7, so it's in that middle section. Was this always 7 issues, or did they expand it at some point?
No, I think it was always 7.
Okay, that's just my memory. I think it's just I expect 6 for minis, so I just assumed, and I kind of noticed on the front of this one that it was 5 of 7. But yeah, it's very much that middle section of the story, kind of setting things up ready for the end game, and I'm very excited for that still.
What are you giving it?
I'm going to make an 8.
Yeah, I'll give it the 8. Hairsine's art, as per usual for me, is is not bad, but occasionally, again, I do think consistently it's been better this series than it was in the first one. But occasionally there'll be a face here or there that I think's a little bit in the weird skinny side or.
Sure, yeah. I mean, for whatever reason, Hairsine art has never bothered me as much as you. I think there's enough style in it that it gets around it, but I get where you're coming from.
All right, Young Justice issue 20. Brian Michael Bendis and Scott Godlewski on the art. This is I double checked this to make sure it was the final one because the caption at the end says never the end, and I was like, oh, is this last one? Because it was only the phrasing at the end that made me think that, because it's fairly standalone. But what's weird about this is that this issue feels like it should have been much earlier in the run, and it does feel like it's setting up for a much longer run. It feels like this is because this issue is an issue that focuses on Kelly. This is the Teen Lantern, right? And it's them establishing their base at Mount Justice. So it feels like this is the end of the pilot where they're setting up where they're going to be working out of, and it starts off with like Kelly's like fighting something. We don't get to see. A lot of narration boxes talking about how she's kind of a nervous lantern who doesn't even know what the oath is. She just stole this power because she found this weird alien device connected up to a power battery. All the rest of it, but it jumps back in time, and it's the team being shown Mount Justice for the first time, and so you got the new people who have never seen it: Naomi, Ginny, Kelly, and just being shown around, and then they find like a dormant red tornado. I say the dormant red tornado, and they're explaining who Red Tornado is, and there's some jokes here. The banter's solid, as it ever is, if you like Bendis' dialogue, and I do. Sometimes you could do with toning it down a little bit, but there's a joke here where basically Bart's speaking so fast that Jenny mishears him and thinks she says red tomato. So she keeps calling him Red Tomato. Which Connor's shaking his head at. He's really upset.
I'm not upset. It's so typical Bendis dialogue.
Yeah.
Do you really disagree with that?
I don't disagree with it. I just I like typical Bendis dialogue, though. I don't have a problem with that. But Red Tornado wakes up as like intruder alert and starts fighting them, and actually knocks out every single member except Kelly. So this is very much Kelly's issue, with sort of her driving force. And then John Shure shows up, and he sort of quickly, like after she's like dismantled Red Tornado, basically debates with her, and it flashes back because we saw in the background that they were talking to each other back when they were helping clear up the debris in Metropolis. So it flashes back to that interaction where he basically says there's a lot going on right now, but we have to have a serious talk about that tech you've got, and it's not yours. You kind of taken it and stolen it. And it comes back to present day where he's like, look, you're going to have to give that up. Clearly you're going to end up hurting someone. It's not yours. You didn't earn it. And Kelly's like, I think I did kind of earn it. Like, I feel full and proper with this. And one by one, the rest of the team kind of like wake up and stick up for her and say, no, she's doing good with this. She's a member of Young Justice. We are sanctioned by Superman. Mr. Stewart. Take it up with the chief. And it's kind of this thing where he's not really, like, John's kind of coming off as kind of the bad guy, not like in a villainous way, just in a kind of the adult who's like stepping in and not letting them do the thing they want to do. Which is kind of weird when you've got Tim and Steph and some of the other characters who actually feel like they're already like 19, 20. And it doesn't feel quite the same. But Kelly is much younger though. Kelly's like, 10 or 12 or something like that. But there's a great line-up shot with them all together, sort of behind her, sort of sticking up for her. And when she says that, look, I feel like I never really belonged before, and when I got this device, I feel like I had a purpose and like I belonged to something and like I could help with it. I don't know if you can relate to that. And you can sort of see in the art here from Godlewski that John, it's the first moment where he kind of like almost feels bad that he's even trying to take it from her, because he kind of does understand it. It's the moment he kind of relates to. So he's like, okay, we have to have. Basically, there's a distress call. He has to go and do Justice League stuff. So he's like, look, I'll leave just now, but we have to have a talk about this at the Hall of Justice. You have to be trained. You have to be all that. And she's like, sorry. He's like, not by me necessarily. It flies off. It's okay, but he says you have to rebuild Red Tornado. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He's supposed to guard the place, and he broke in. And the final page is just like them all hanging out on the beach outside of Mount Justice, with the reinforcements there to hang out. From Miguel from Dial H and the Wonder Twins. Steph is there. all the regular extras. And it just says "Never the End" as the end of the issue, and it's kind of this weird thing where I think it's a fairly solid issue, maybe a little overly wordy at times, but that's not exactly uncommon for Bendis. But I think the sentiment's good. I think it's important to give a character like Kelly a focused issue. It feels like instead of all the multiverse hopping shit we were doing for the first 10 issues or whatever it was, we really should have been having issues like this, and this feels like it should have been in the first arc or so of the run. And it feels weird because this issue does feel like it's setting up a status quo for where Young Justice will now continue for a long run, and that long run doesn't exist because this is literally the last issue.
Unless they're planning on relaunching it in March under a different creative team.
Very possible. And that might even do it the good, because I think Bendis has had some moments in it. It does feel like it's been kind of spinning a lot of wheels, and which is weird because when it shows some weird direction like it does here, where it does feel like, oh, this is the start of a status quo that could lead to a lot of great stories.
20 issues in.
Yeah. So if it does get a new creative team of some kind, maybe Mark Russell would be a good writer on this book.
Mark Russell would be good on pretty much anything. Let's be honest.
But he's written some of the characters before. Extend it out a little bit, or even someone like who else would you put on here? I don't know. There's probably a few different names that I could see kind of working with this kind of team. Honestly, I think Gail Simone might even be a good fit for this type of book.
Probably.
Of bubbly characters.
I think what's worth pointing out as well is younger teams, Young Justice, Team Titans, whatever, are great fits for lesser known creators because it lets them try their hand at a lot of characters that are recognizable enough without a lot of the pressure that comes with the upper tier books. So I do think that you tend to get a lot of unknowns or relatively unknowns on these sorts of books. Bendis was kind of the exception here.
It was kind of an awkward, bittersweet thing because it was a pretty solid issue for the most part. But it was like, this is the ending, and it doesn't really mean anything at this point because it's already over. And it doesn't feel like we've had a story that has it feels like we didn't really get much of an actual story outside of just why do we all not know who each other are, or what are our histories? And we spent most of the time sorting out that. And the last 2 or 3 issues, which are, I think mostly have been good, maybe one wasn't, but it's had this weird feeling that ever since we knew it was ending, it was like every issue that goes by because they all feel like these little standalone issues which are solid and are there designed to be in between the big runs, but there's no next run, or arc, I should say, not run. But there's no next arc coming, so it has this weird feeling.
I guess what I'd say from the outside, just having listened to you and Matt for some of the issues, a reasonable amount of the issues, it's so weird because obviously you were very excited at the start because, hey, Young Justice is back and this is the teams together, and you kind of, I don't want to say soured on it, but kind of got it's just doing this over and over, especially the multiverse stuff near the start. You in particular were a little bit jaded by that. And then here at the end, like I say, it's ending and you've had these standalone issues that have been fine by the sounds of it, but the feeling I get, at least from the outside, is kind of you've been kind of wondering, why is this the ending? What's the statement of the run here at the end? And it's kind of just felt like a collection of random issues that didn't fit anywhere else, almost.
I'm not wondering that. I'm not wondering what the statement at the end is, because I don't think this was meant to be the end.
Statement of the run as a whole, not the statement that the ending is making.
Well, yeah, but that's kind of my point, is I don't think this was supposed to be the end of the run. I think Bendis probably was expecting to do more, and he hadn't got around to it yet, and for just wasn't selling enough. They wanted to cancel it. Or maybe whatever it's repackaged in, maybe Bendis will still be involved with it in some fashion with some of the characters in a separate book. At the very least, we're supposed to get a season 2 of Naomi, which I hope we do, because that book was great. That was one of the best things Bendis has written.
I'm sure you will get that eventually, if for no other reason that I bet it sells really well in the bookstores.
Oh, very possibly, yeah. So it's just this really weird, bittersweet kind of thing where it just feels like it's starting to set up a status quo where I could really enjoy what it's doing. They're at Mountain Justice, this team's kind of established. And there's a sweet moment where they all stick up for Kelly, and Kelly afterwards kind of admits that she's never really had a friend before, and this is kind of a new thing for her. That people are actually got her back, and it was kind of sweet, and it was like, yeah, that's kind of nice. And I just wish that this was the start of the run, or near the start of the run, as opposed to the last issue. It's kind of odd. So yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame that it kind of ends in this weird place. I don't even want to say whimper because that's not quite right either. It just feels like untapped potential. And not even just because it needs another team. I think Bendis does have the potential to have a great run of this team in him, this book, this set of characters. But
it's hard to feel too sympathetic in the sense of, okay, you're talking. It feels like it's really getting going now, and that's great. You know that it's starting, and and by great I mean it's also frustrating and disappointing that it's ending.
mm-hmm.
But also, if it takes you kind of 20 issues to get to that stage, I understand why maybe it got cancelled, or why there's a problem with that. Why readership probably dropped off if you've got to wait 20 issues till it's get into the real meat of the run. That's quite a long time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have much more to add. I wish it was better. I wish I was more happy with what it is, and
yeah,
I just kind of not. So there you go. That is Young Justice. Yeah, I mean, I think this is like a solid 6.5, maybe. Yeah, I feel like I'm coloring it because it's the ending, and that's what's making it weird. I think on its own merits, if this was just an issue that was early in the run, I'd probably give this a solid 8. But it's kind of got a weird feeling to it because it isn't that.
Because it's the ending, it's like, well, it doesn't feel like an ending, right?
Well, it isn't an ending. It was never supposed to be an ending.
But I mean, part of this should be, in theory, at least in my opinion, on Bendis, that, okay, once he knows this book is ending and this is the last issue, should have rewritten this to feel like an ending.
That's I mean, assuming he even had any sort of advance notice, given what the schedule is to when he writes something and when it comes out. I don't know.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know that either.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. So, anyway, that's that. Which will take us on to Dark Multiverse, or Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Batman Hush issue 1. This, of course, is... Where's my thing here? Oh, I didn't write the creators down for this one. That's my bad.
It's Philip Kennedy Johnson writing and Dexter Soy on art.
Thank you. That explains why the art was good.
It does, doesn't it? Because Dexter Soy tends to be rather decent. I do have one critique near the start, although it might be more of a lettering critique than an art critique, but the art lends to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think it's like the third page. It's the double page splash of the origin stuff. I think it's part of it's this faded out kind of blue grayscale style coloring on the art, right? To give it it's the flashback coloring, and the narration box kind of going through the history is in the big yellow boxes. My eyes wanted to read this in the wrong order because I went from the top left and I wanted to go straight down because it looks like the page is split in 3, but it's not. You have to go across first and then across the bottom. And I think the fact that the white panel borders, especially on that left side, splitting the top and bottom, blended in with the art too much with that coloring that I didn't realize until after I read it and then went back up, and it just didn't make any sense to me. I was like, hang on, something's not right here.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. This is an interesting one because this is a return to this format that we've not seen since basically the first Metal was coming out, right? Or just after the
no,
first
it was quite a bit later than that. I think it was only about because it was these finished right before all the stuff happened with Wally. Because I think this Tempest Fuginaut happened in the he showed up in the end of that Wally series flash forward, right? To give him all his Manhattan powers.
He did. Although I don't think it was like right before that though, because I think he'd been away for a little bit of time.
See, this is the thing. I don't know if it was that long ago. I didn't think it was anywhere near the last Metal.
Maybe it wasn't during the last Metal, but it's been a while since the last one. I it's been over a year.
Do you know what the last one was? Maybe Blackest Night or Infinite Crisis, maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of looking, just to guess. November 2019, December 2019. So about a year since those last ones. But that's closer to now than the first Metal, right?
When did the first Metal end?
It's a good question.
I want to say that was like the end of 2018.
It's a very good question.
Oh no, it wasn't, because it was before No Justice, which was like in April. So that'd have been early 2018. It ended.
That
Okay, that sounds roughly right in my head. Because Snyder's Justice League started in summer 2018. Anyway, it's been a while. Is the point, right?
It has, yeah. I'll grant you that.
It's format. So I was kind of curious, like, what's the point of this? What is the point of bringing these back? Because, well, we are doing some, obviously, Dark Multiverse stuff because they're featuring in Death Metal to an extent. It's not really the focus of Death Metal this time. They're there. There's all these, like, Dark Batman, or Dark versus Batman running around.
And it always felt like, as much as they were an excuse to do DC's What If stories, with the Tempest Fuginaut stuff, it felt like there was a point to those original 5 or 6 issues, whatever it was.
Yeah, and I don't think that's here. Like, Tempest is there at the start and the end to sort of, like, essentially act as like the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. That's kind of his purpose here.
That's a pretty good analogy, I think, yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it's building to it. It feels like it's just here. He's just here to sort of introduce. He's here to give the almost another anthology to compare it to. It's almost like the Rod Serling intro and outro to a Twilight Zone, where he's just there to sort of say, deep in the dark, multiverse.
I could almost read some of this in his voice.
Yeah. So that's that. So the opening of the book explains, this is what the Hush story normally is. If you've read Hush, you'll hear it all. But then explains the backstory of this world that we're getting into, where Tommy was with Bruce and their parents were with him when his parents were killed. So they all witnessed it. They were all kind of like at the end of the alleyway and watched it all happen.
Yeah.
And they took in Bruce instead of going to Alfred, and they raised Bruce. And it leads to this world, and the first chunk of the issue is basically just establishing what this world is, which is that Tommy was a senator.
Yes, financed by Talia al Ghul and the rest of the League of Assassins.
Yes, they are kind of in a weird, not so romantic relationship. Jason's he's like a playboy, but he's also an arms dealer, as we find out later.
And he's with Dinah,
which is irrelevant because she never pops back up later.
That's true, yeah.
Harvey Dent's Attorney General, and you've got
that rings true. That's so far the bit that I go, yeah, I see that happening.
I wasn't really disputing that, to be fair.
No, but I just all the rest of it feels like just kind of a lot of this feels like just for the sake of being a little bit different. Whereas Harvey Dent as Attorney General makes perfect sense.
You always have this fine line with these like other world stories of like where all these characters are. There's one big one later that I do think is really lazy and on the nose. We'll get into it, but
I'm intrigued.
So basically, he flies off. He leaves this big fancy party he's at because he hears something's happening at Arkham, which he basically funds. And Dr. Crane, of course, shows him the body of Bruce Wayne. And Bruce Wayne in this world has basically been mentally ill since childhood.
Thomas Elliot we're following. We should play. I don't think you mentioned that.
No?
I don't think you did. I could be wrong, but
I started off by saying he was senator, right?
Maybe. I don't know. But this is all Thomas Elliot that we're following.
Yeah.
I think you just kind of mentioned, Thomas Elliot senator, and then went straight into all the other bits.
Sure, okay. Yes, Thomas Elliot's the one we're following, and he gets taken to the body of Bruce Wayne, who has finally somehow killed himself in Arkham, and he's been in and out of Arkham his whole life because he's mentally ill because of the death of his parents. And Crane's like, hey, I'm surprised you didn't get me to kill him sooner, because now you are complete control of Wayne Enterprises, yada yada yada.
Yeah, he's like, hey, he's been a vegetable for years, so I get why it's been easy for you, but I mean, this definitely makes it clear for you now. Yeah,
and it teases that the janitor's the Joker in this world, with the big grin and all that. You find out for sure later, of course, but the thing we hear though is that there's a legend going through all the cells that they all believe this demon bat that Amadeus Arkham was obsessed about.
Just the Bat of Arkham.
Yeah. And we see this, hushed version of Batman with the bandages that attack and kill Crane. And this sets up this idea, like the hand of Bruce Wayne had like a ticket, the movie ticket from the night Bruce died, and we find out that all these other people dying throughout the city are these like basically little bits of evidence from that night are popping up around them. And we get more world building. We get Barbara Gordon, who leads the Outsiders, who are kind of like a like fascist squad who's trying to avenge the death of her father.
Yeah,
Tim's
there's
on
a
that team.
there's a lot of extraneous world building in this issue.
There's a lot, yeah. There's a lot that's not that important. Like for example, there's I'm not even sure if it's Steph or Cass who's on this team. I assume it's Cass because of the full mask, but I'm not even sure, to be honest.
I would have lent towards Cass as well, but she talks a lot.
It never really comes up. It doesn't really matter who it is. And this is when we get the Grey Sun pops up, and this is the one I hate. I hate this bullshit.
I get why you hate it, but I'm not going to defend it and say, oh, I like it, because I don't really like it. But this isn't a new thing for this run. Dick Grayson being the Grey Sun and being a Talon was a whole thing even in Snyder's Batman, and it was part of Nightwing at that time.
I know, I know all this, and I hated the Talon stuff with Dick, and I hate that it's brought up in this. But I just hate that he is publicly known as the Grey Sun. It's just like Tim Drake being called the Drake. I hate it with every fiber of my being.
I get that. I really do feel that.
Yeah, so he's actually working for Thomas Elliot. He's kind of like the head of because we keep hearing about President March, who of course is Lincoln March. So you can tell that this story is definitely, while it's meant to be a hush, what if kind of story.
There's a lot of attention to the early Snyder.
There's a lot of stroking the Snyder run in this as well.
I don't mind when it was President March and that was early on. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool, because there's no reason that Lincoln March shouldn't exist in an Elseworlds, right?
No?
I'm like, okay, I'm down for that. I'm down for not even that, him knowing that he's related or any of that potential bollocks. Just the idea that he exists and he rose up to become president is fine. I'm okay with that. It was the Grayson stuff that links it that makes it rough, I think.
Yeah, but then you also have Grayson saying the Court of Owls is sentencing you to die, blah blah blah. His outfit's very Court of Owls-esque. It's not quite...
it's a straight up almost Talon outfit.
Yeah, the mask is very different, of course, but it's the color scheme. It's all that. It's just, I mean, honestly, Snyder's run is one that's not aged well for me, because I never liked the back half of it. And we reread the first, 12 issues or whatever,
I think it's 11, but yeah.
The Court of Owls story from the start of the run. And I definitely didn't like it as much as I did the first time I read it. So I'm not as super into a lot of the stuff from it. So, all this stuff being kind of shoehorned in here kind of just felt like a little bit extraneous when... Yeah, because they go to Jason, the arms dealer, to find out about this rocket that shot down the helicopter earlier, and there's a whole fight because the League of Assassins is turning on Thomas Elliot.
Are they not with Tommy Elliot? He doesn't really know, and Talia's like, oh, why would we do this?
This book is over 50 pages long, and I feel like you could cut out half of it. This could be a 25-page book and tell the same story with all this extra fat just cut away from it.
I think part of my biggest problem with this book is I don't understand how this is a hush Elseworlds. Like, most of the other stories, not all of them were good, right? But all of them, I understood how they were that particular story and a twisted version of that.
Yeah, I mean,
the only thing that makes this a quote-unquote hush Elseworlds is that it's Tommy Elliot.
And they've got Batman in bandages to look more hush-like.
But that's just for reasons, because of the name. I
know, but I'm saying that visually that's what they're doing to try and make it feel that way.
But in terms of the hush storyline of someone coming back who's, and Bruce doesn't know who it is, and we're going through all these villains. That's kind of what the hush story is, right? The original story. This is not any version of that story. This isn't a twisted version of it.
Well, what's interesting to me is that early on, what I thought it was going to start doing was the idea that in this world, Bruce was going to use all these villains that didn't really exist yet to attack Tommy. I thought that was going to be the point. It was like a flip where, because that was the whole thing with Hush, is that he used the entire Rose Gallery to get to Batman. Yeah. And I thought this was going to be, Bruce is using, even though they're not like public villains, or they're not known villains in the same way, but because he does use Joker, he's got Jack Napier working as the janitor at Arkham. But I thought he was going to end up having like the help of, pick another villain that wasn't mentioned.
Riddler's a pretty important one for the Hush story.
There you go. just different random villains where Edward Nygma was the guy with the plan and the brains or whatever. I really thought that was where it was going to kind of go, and that's why it was a flip on the Hush story, but it didn't. and I think that was. I don't know. It's not terrible. I think it's easily enough to read, and the art, of course, is pretty good throughout. It's not Soy's best work. I don't think it's as good, say, as his recent Batman the Outsiders issues, but it is pretty solid.
It's perfectly decent. There are some nice panels. The bit where Tommy Elliot is facing off with Dick, and it cuts to the black and white silhouette as they go through the floor when they get dragged down. I think that's a particularly nice panel.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's just solid par for the course Dexter Soy work, right? Nothing special, but good because he doesn't churn out bad work.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. The story just kind of ends with Tommy going back to the Wayne Manor, and eventually, I mean, Dick's there as well, and Dick's about to kill him, but then we find out that Alfred is down in the cave with like all the caged other people that Batman's went after, and
yeah,
that's when Batman actually jumps out and
it
basically
frustrates me as an issue, and I think it is objectively a bad issue because it's not telling a story. It's the purpose of this issue isn't to tell a story of this alternate version of Hush. It's to set up a world that we can maybe tell stories in the future. That's why we spend so much time with Barbara Gordon and the Outsiders. It's why we set up. Oh, here's Jason Todd. Here's what Penguin and Two-Face are doing. Here's where the League of Assassins are. It's all this is. I'm reading it and I'm seeing we can revisit this later. I can see the editors jotting down the notes to revisit future issues. I don't feel a story.
What's frustrating to me is that the whole idea of him using various other characters is kind of brought up because he's basically doing the villain monologue towards the end where he's explaining how he did all this and how he faked his death and he's got all these people that helped him in Arkham. Instead of it being like 6 characters, I mean, first of all, I would have liked it to be more intricate in just one page of him explaining how he used various people, but it's a bunch of like barely nobodies. Like it's just like, okay, I'm sure these are all characters that have popped up in runs or whatever before, but it's not the Riddler, it's not Bane, it's not goddamn Harley Quinn or anything like that. It's this Casey Callahan, who's a cat burglar. Okay, who's Casey? Who the f is Casey? And I'm sure
you just got your episode title right there.
I'm sure there's a fan out there. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm the #1 fan of Casey Callahan, and how dare you not know who Casey Callahan is? How dare you run a DC Comics podcast and not know who Casey Callahan is?
It is a lot of like disgraced spy Nick Mason, martial artist Dolores Madigan, mob assassin Sal Buckets Barusco. I'm like, who are all these chumps?
Pretty much.
Like, I think it's notable that page that has like the 6 of them on starts with Amadeus Arkham because it's like, oh, we all know who Arkham is.
Yeah, that's a part of Batman history, a cool bit of mythology that they can tie into, and I feel like it gets mentioned a lot more ever since the Arkham Asylum game came out. I feel like that's one of those positive influences from other media where someone did something cool with it in the game, and all of a sudden, comic book writers started like using that a little bit. That's the history of Arkham.
I think you might be right, but again, like you say, that's a positive example where I don't think any stories have overdone it. It's been referenced here or there, probably more often since that game started doing things with it, but in a way that feels cohesive and it's a positive feedback loop for it where I'm quite happy to have more, not stories about Amadeus Arkham, but just, references to establish that, no, this is the history of Gotham. It makes the world feel more real, right? Yeah,
no, I like it. It's so Batman kills Tommy. We hear the world is wondering where Tommy's disappeared to. Talia's with the President March now, and that's basically it. I mean, honestly, it doesn't do anything that interesting. It's not, like I say, I don't think it's a bad issue because I think it's written well enough in terms that it flows well. Some of the differences in the world are a little interesting to discover, but it's like 50 pages that ultimately doesn't have enough story to justify it, and then and you're kind of waiting like, okay, so what are you going to do at the end to justify like all this time that was spent on it, and it never really did. So I got to the end of it and went, that was a long read for very little return.
Yeah, I mean, the only 2 things of that whole thing you just said I would dispute are, one, I'm pretty sure he doesn't kill Tommy Elliot. I think he's just in a cage at the end.
Sorry.
I don't see him necessarily, but he kind of mentions, I've forgotten what days, what daytime is essentially. He's like, oh, you will too.
Sure.
And we don't,
sure.
and then we see them all hanging in a cage. So I'm assuming he's just in a cage. And the other thing I disagree is that I do think it is a quote unquote bad issue. And I don't think it has I don't think it has a good story. I think if you cut out half of this, I might say it's a half decent issue, but still probably wouldn't be good because I don't think the concept is good. But if you cut out all the Barbara stuff, a lot of the Dick Grayson stuff, I might go, okay, it's fine. But I think as it is, it's a mess and it's bad.
I'm talking about writing quality, art quality, things like that. Conceptually, I agree it's not that interesting.
No, I think writing quality falls under the art quality. I'll give you is fine, absolutely. Dexter Soy does nothing wrong, even if he doesn't excel, does nothing wrong. Writing quality, I think, comes under that is that it's sloppy.
Okay, fine. You're more negative than I am. Are you happy? You've achieved it, right?
A little bit, yeah.
What are you giving it?
I'm giving it a 4.
I'll give it a 5. I'll give it straight down the middle. I think you can happily skip it. It's not going to make you upset or angry. It's just nothing.
And I have to say, it makes me question if I want to read the next Flashpoint one. Maybe I'll see who the team is on it, and if there's a writer that interests me, maybe. But it makes me feel like these issues coming back for the Tales of the Dark Multiverse does feel more like a cash grab, and just because it's a thing rather than there's an actual story here this time.
I would just depends on who's writing it. Depends like how busy is that week. If it's another quiet week like this, I'm probably a lot more willing to check it out
That's
for
fair.
curiosity's sake. But they are all kind of really individual. So just because this one was bad doesn't mean. Because to be fair, the initial batch of them are mostly pretty good. There was only one or two that I didn't like out of that first batch.
I really like. We like Nightfall. We liked.
That's a Superman was good.
Yeah, Infinite Crisis was really good.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of that story.
Well, Blackest Night was the only one that I remembered. Not.
Yeah, Blackest Night I remember not liking. I'm sure there was more than that though that existed.
Wasn't that
there was Judas Contract, which was fine.
Yeah, that was okay. But yeah, I mean, 3 good ones out of 5 is not bad for these types of things.
It's absolutely not bad. And like I say, the only reason that I'm like going, oh well, do I really want to read Flashpoint one now? Is more the return of these a year or so later, feeling like just because we can, like the cashing in of it, makes me more skeptical, and this did not convince me otherwise.
Yeah. Oh well, there you go. That will take Connor on to Red Hood issue 50 every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Our patrons at a certain tier. There's a $30 tier where you can make myself or Connor read a book. There is a limited number of slots though. It's not like we can, because we don't want to get to a situation where there's like 50 books each. So there's a limited number of slots, but you can make me or Connor read a book of your choosing once per month. And as has been happening now for seemingly, it's not been 50 months because you read the first arc on your own free will and then you gave up.
It might be close to though once you count in the annuals and stuff.
Oh yeah, it could be closer. I think it'll maybe just be a couple off now as opposed to the full 6 off. But yeah. So there you go. Take it away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Red Hood, isn't it?
No, David got his money worth there. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, I will say is unfortunately still Lobdell on art and
Lobdell on art.
Sorry, Lobdell writing and Pantalino on art.
I would read that issue just to see what it was like.
Me too. I was reading who was the artist on the credits page, so I made sure I got it right and said art as I was saying it. That is my bad. Pantalino on art and Lobdell writing. I'm not sure if this is quite the last Lobdell issue or if there's one or two more. I don't know.
I think it's the last one. 50 was his last one.
I thought it was, but it doesn't feel like much of an. I mean, I guess there's ending qualities to it, but I'll start by I was slightly confused at the start of this issue, and I will say part of this is on me because it opened saying 1 month ago above Gotham City, and I skimmed over the that establishing panel because in reality, in this book, there are a shitload of establishing panels, and most of them are meaningless. So my eyes kind of don't always take them in. And Bizarro's here, and like Bizarro's just chilling around doing stuff, and I was like, wait, didn't we leave Bizarro in hell with taking Trigon's seat at the end of the last issue? I actually had to go back and check the last issue to check I wasn't imagining that, and then got back to this issue and was like, oh, it says 1 month ago. Never mind. It's picking up threads from the Joker War stuff that we just had. That Jason cares about, Joker's daughter, and there was stuff going on with that. And apparently, there was. I barely remember this. There was some dead body that he had that he thought was Joker's daughter, Duella Dent. And he's like, it turns out it wasn't her. It was just some homeless person. Oh well. And it's like, now I need to find the real Duella Dent. So that's the opening handful of pages, a quick rescue mission. They grab her. Bizarro and Artemis are with him, and they get her and take her back and put her in a hospital bed. And then we skip ahead to quote unquote today, which is presumably right after the last issue ended, or more or less anyway. And this opens with Jason waking up. He's stood next to a window, staring out, doing that whole pensive Anakin Skywalker on the balcony in episode 2 shit. And definitely not Padme, but Artemis walks up to him and is like, hey, you're all right, I haven't slept so well. And clearly having just gotten out of the same bed as Jason. And I'm like, wasn't there a whole thing for the last 8 issues about Jason's girlfriend? And she got possessed by the sword spirit? He was with someone else? That was a whole thing, I'm sure. And now he's just with Artemis? That wasn't a thing? I don't know. They're just sleeping together now? I don't get it. I don't know where this has come from. And you got some reminiscing. It's like, Roy, Bizarro, Corey. She's off doing space stuff now. I miss them all so much. Because I guess this does show it is Lovedale's last issue because there's all this reminiscing going on. Some nice tender moments with Artemis, which again, they were not in a relationship. I don't know where this has come from. Madness. And then, of course, Generation Outlaw show up because they're at Mark Gunn's house, is where they are now. Who Pete now knows who Mark Gunn is and gets all these references.
If I was listening to you, yes.
Yes. Yeah, they're at Mark Gunn's house with Generation
okay.
Zero, which are Generation Outlaw, sorry, which are the shitty heroes that were, the arc that you read, or however many issues that you read. All the really shitty, not X-Men heroes that Jason was training.
Oh, I recall, yes.
I'm sure you do.
I mean, I couldn't name
vivid detail.
I couldn't name you any of them, but I remember the pain of reading the issue.
Could you describe even a single one of them? Not even name, just describe the power set, look, anything about any of them.
There was a baby, and there was one whose head was separate or was in a different part of their body or something like that.
I know where you're coming from.
Okay.
You're merging two things that are actually the same thing.
Oh, really? That's the baby.
So there is a baby that is carried by a zombie.
Ah, yes, okay.
And that's where you're getting the carried head from, I think. It's all the baby. But I think that's where you're coming from. But I mean, credit. I mean, you got 1 out of 6. Or I mean, you got a half out of 6.
Oh, there's one with a sort of rusty mechanical teeth jaw thing. Big metal jaw.
Oh, I think yeah, Devour. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, I'll get you.
That's all I can do.
It's not bad.
Though.
I mean, it's pretty close. There's the not Doomsday one as well. If you remember Doomed, Lobdell's previous series in the middle of New 52, the kid who got infected with Doomsday shit, so he looks like lanky Doomsday. This is ringing 0 bells, Pete. I can see.
No.
But basically, Monsieur Mallah is there shouting at them all, and Jason's like, "What the hell are you doing?" and sticks a gun up to the back of his head. And then Margun's like, no, I hired him. I hired him and the brain, and they're kind of training the kids because you pissed off repeatedly. And Jason's like, they're my responsibility. He's like, yeah, well, you left them with me, so screw you. And then he goes, fine, they're all yours, and then leaves. So, Jason's a great teacher and responsible figure, clearly. And he goes off to Veritas. I don't know if she's in the middle of the earth or if she's in where, but they've got Joker's daughter. She's been in a coma. She's just woken up, and she's unresponsive. So he goes and sticks the her Joker face, the Joker mask on her, and she starts Joker laughing. And he's like, "Oh yeah, probably should have thought that she'd do that." It's like, "Oh no shit." And then we cut to the Iceberg Lounge because again, this is the greatest hits of Lobdell's run here. The they're just doing stuff there. Susie Sue's is running stuff. Duella Dent is doing physical therapy, learning to walk again in the Iceberg Casino for some reason that I don't quite get. It's not going that well, and Jason's taunting her, being like, "Hey, I'll fight your dad." I'm pretty sure he's on about Joker and not Two-Face, not her. But I mean, I don't know when it comes to her exactly. And she walks, and then he takes her. This is all cutting around really quickly. Like every couple of pages, it is cutting like this. It cuts to the Wayne graveyard, and they look at Jason's grave. And he's like, "Yeah, I was buried here once." And it's this whole thing, and she's like, "I see what you're doing. You're trying to do this. Don't go down this path that I've gone down." Speech. And again, then we're cutting. The next morning, we're back to Jason Artemis in bed, and having this conversation. Him going, "Oh, I might love you," and she, this is actual dialogue. He goes, "I might love you," and he's got a head against his head against her waist at this point, and she goes, "Or not." That's dialogue. I might love you, or not, and that's okay. That is a conversation in this book, and it's atrocious. Yeah, and then Joker's daughter, she's running away, and Jason's like, "I know she's running away, but I'm not going to forbid her to leave. She can do what she wants. She's got to learn." And she runs into Pup Pup, which, if you remember Pup Pup, Pete, I will give you a point.
Nope.
Pup Pup is Bizarro's little Superman doll that speaks. If you remember that at all.
Nope. No, that's not.
To be honest, for a long time in this run, I thought it was only in Bizarro's head that it speaks, but it's speaking here to Joker's door and is going along with it. That reminds me, there's a point at the start of this book, when he's reminiscing about all the people.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about Bizarro, and he says, "Imagine Superman, but all heart." I'm like, that's goddamn Superman, Lobdell. You've just described Superman, not Bizarro. Like, it's ridiculous. Anyway, Pup Pup is in the way. She kicks him, and then he's like, "Dude, what the hell?" And she's like, "Oh, that's adorable. Let me give you a hand." And they become best friends. And they fall asleep together, and he stops her running away. And Jason comes and puts a little red cape over them as like a blanket while they sleep in the middle of the field. Yeah, I don't know. And then it's like days later, we're cutting around a lot again, and they're on a little mission. It's Jason Artemis and Joker's daughter and Pup Up all on a mission as the Outlaws, and they're doing some fighting. And Duella just starts screaming, and he's like, "Do you know what? For the first time, I don't want this violence. I don't want to kill people." So they're gonna take her back home and leave her with her actual family and her parents. I say parents. I'm pretty sure, Harvey Dent is a dad. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but her name is Duella Dent. So I'm not getting this from nowhere. If that is why my head is there. But they leave Pup Pup with her to keep her company and look over her, and then Miss and Jason, they're driving off on their bikes, and they're like, "Oh, we're taking a break." And then it's like, "This is the end of us." And it's like, "You don't need us anymore, Jason." Yeah, and that's it. He goes off on his own. He's like, he's going back to Gotham, and that's the end of the issue. It's just him going back to Gotham and saying, next, Jason returns home, and it is 50 pages of nonsense. There is so much of this that feels like Lobdell didn't actually want to leave this book. Like, there are like a lot of obligatory tied up like loose ends. Like, I guess we'll answer that. I guess we'll tie up that. But it in no way feels like the end of a run beyond that we're doing the reminiscing things. It feels like he was forced off the book and he's doing a final issue to celebrate rather than this is what I actually wanted to end my story. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy about this.
He's probably got like a close to 100 issue run at this point.
Oh, longer probably. But I think that's why it surprises me, because it's sold pretty consistently. He's obviously been happy writing it, which is why it surprises me that it feels like he's been forced off as opposed to him choosing to leave.
I can't remember. Was this decision after Didio left? Is this maybe more to do with that?
Oh, maybe. Are you thinking that the reason he had the book was he had some dirt on Didio and now the replacements don't care?
Yeah, either Dart or maybe they're just friends or something.
No, he definitely had dirt.
Something disgusting like that. I don't know. All right.
That could be the reason. I'm going to give this a 3.5. It's a very weak issue that has no story. Has a lot of just random cuts about the scenes. It feels very fragmented. It's not a good issue.
Okay, well, that will take us on to the section of the show where we pick our favorites of the week, favorite panel/moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and of course rank the books. Top 5 usually, but in a week like this when there's less. Now, I should have had 5 books, admittedly, and I just didn't realize one came out. But like I say, we'll come back to Justice League next week. 56 was the correct thing that I think Connor guessed earlier, so
oh, go me.
Good luck with that. So, all right, favorite panel/moment.
I'm just gonna take Cass doing the Shazam.
You little bitch.
You should have gone first.
I mean, I can take it too if I want. I don't really care. I don't have this. There can be no duplicates nonsense that you and Matt seem to have a problem with. Well, I know I'm tempted. I'm tempted to go with Damien cracking the joke about marrying Jason because that really cracked me up. That was definitely in my line of dialogue of the week. But in terms of pleasing moments, I think Cass going Shazam has to be it. So that's the pick. That's the pick. Best cover of the week, go.
Honestly, there's not a lot that stands out to me this week. The obligatory Mattina Batman cover. What I'm assuming is a Mattina DCeased cover, although I could be wrong.
Nah, yeah, it's Mattina. Yeah, the Mattina one where it's like the skeleton inside Swamp Thing as Swamp Thing's kind of corroding away.
Those are both nice, and the Derek Chew Young Justice is all right, but I mean that's about it. Nothing's really jumping out at me. I guess I'll go with Matina's DCeased one.
I'll only put that too. I do think the Batman's really good. It's a really nice piece of art of Ghostmaker, but it's Ghostmaker, so naturally I'm going with the Swamp Thing one for DCeased.
Yeah, and Mattina is a very reliable variant artist where they're always good. I don't usually pick them unless there's nothing else because they're always there and they're always consistent. I know what to expect from a Mattina cover.
The movie variant for DCeased this time is really boring because it's just the Wonder Woman poster, but because I know it's technically supposed to be, Cassie Wonder Woman on this, it doesn't look different enough.
You can't tell, yeah. Because at least last time it was I think last one was the Aquaman cover, but you had I think it was like Green Canary was kneeling at the front, for example, and it was clearly the Aquaman cover, which, don't get me wrong, is a boring enough choice as it is, but at least it was DCeased themed. This, if you take off it saying DCeased Dead Planet, you would not be able to tell it was DCeased related.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what it is. Best art of the week.
Batman, maybe. Yeah. Honestly, I don't think there's any real standout artists. I mean, it might even be Dexter Soy on Hush.
I think I would probably go with Soy on Hush.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean towards that in the end. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah. But I mean, not an amazing week for. I mean, that's fine. It's Dexter Soy is very reliable and solid, and he does some good work there.
All right, rank your books.
I guess DCeased, Batman, Hush.
I'll put DCeased at number 1 as well. Number 2. Number 2 is probably still Batman. Number 3, Young Justice. Number 4, Hush. I mean, it's a weird week. It's one of these weird weeks where there's not many books. The ones that are there for the most part didn't blow us away. So this is kind of
it's probably one of the most underwhelming weeks we've had in a long time, though.
Yeah, it's always possible when there's not a lot of books though, because there's less chance for it to wow us. But hey, I'll tell you what's coming next week from DC Comics. We got Detective Comics 1030. We have The Flash 765, Wonder Woman 766, Superman 27, Green Lantern Season 2 Issue 9, Hawkman issue 29. That's the final issue of Hawkman, right? And then we have Punchline Special Issue 1. We have Dark Knight's Death Metal Infinite Hours Extreme Issue 1. I've forgotten what that is, to be honest. And American
All
Vampire.
I know about that is it proves we could have taken those backups from the previous issues and stuck them in there.
Well, wait until you see how you feel about this, because this is a $6 book that's oversized too.
Yeah, that's true.
An American Vampire 1976 issue 2 is also out. So
surprisingly light week 2 for us.
Calm before the storm. That's what I'll say. I don't.
And when I say for us, I mean even if you include the books we're not reading, it's pretty light on the output still.
Yeah. I don't even feel bad that because I was going to originally do a Patreon book this week, but I was running late, so I left it out. Next week it looks just as fine to do a Patreon book, to be honest, given that list of books. So that's fine by me. Plus, we'll tackle that Justice League, which we didn't do this week because I just didn't realize it came out.
It happens. I get it.
So there you go. That is basically the show. I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They are our Patreon producers for the month. That means that they are $20 or more on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, which you can go over and support us. You can support us for much less than that, though. You can support us for as little as $1 per month, and $1 would be more than we would make if you watched every single video we put out on MailFuzzTV's YouTube channel. Not just the comics podcast, like everything. If you watched all the TV reviews, you watched all the Screams After Midnight episodes and all the Atomic Cinema Experiment episodes. So it's never too little. And of course, you don't even have to give us money. If you do want to go over to YouTube and hit the like button, that is also a big help. Helps us find more of an audience, as well as rating the podcast 5 stars and giving us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your audio podcast from. All of these things do help, so please go and have a look and see if you can do any of those things. As far as anything else, catch us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast, and I look forward to next week, I suppose. That's basically it. That's quite a week. I don't know. Sometimes I try and jazz it up sometimes, but sometimes you have a quieter week, and it's just how it is. It's where we are. So, yeah. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.